Hi, welcome to Roy's Book Reviews. Today I wish to share my thoughts with you on the novel Butcher by Joyce Carol Oates. Butcher is the second novel by Joyce Carol Oates that I've read, the first being Blonde, and there are quite a few similarities between the two books. Blonde is a fictionalized account of the life of Marilyn Monroe. Since Marilyn is one of the most famous people ever, with much of her life documented once she switched personas from Norma Jean Baker to Marilyn Monroe, minimal research is required to determine which parts of Blonde are undeniable fact and what portions are the work of Oates' speculative imagination. Primarily, the people that Marilyn Monroe had relationships with and the film projects she worked on are the stuff of public record, whereas what went on behind closed doors is best guess territory, and that's where Joyce Carol Oates comes in with her guessing. Blonde is categorized as fiction, but feels very much true to life, whatever truth may be. There have been a couple of screen adaptations of Blonde. The most recent one, about a year or so ago, it aired on Netflix. I thought it did a pretty good job of capturing the essence of the book. I read it and then watched the series one after the other. I thought the series was pretty good, though it doesn't dive nearly as deeply into the psyche of Marilyn Monroe as Joyce Carol Oates does in her book. The printed page is the place to go for the deepest of dives. With Butcher, the subject of Joyce Carol Oates' speculation and examination is a much less known figure named Dr. Silas Aloysius Ware. He is a New Jersey doctor in the 19th century prior to the start of the Civil War. But signs of upheaval over the travesty of slavery are in the air. Ware sides with the abolitionist movement, unlike the majority of his family. From this, one might deduce that he is not a particularly barbaric man, perhaps even a decent one, per standards of the times. Except for what is suggested to the contrary by the title of this novel. While the institution of slavery offends him, the practice of indentured servitude does not. Just about nothing is, was, or ever will be as heinous as American slavery, but indentured servitude gave it a run for its money. Distinctions between the statuses of slave and indentured servant were often subtle at best. The main difference was that indentured servants were in a temporary state of unchained bondage, with a termination date to look forward to. Often that date kept being pushed back, and the end in sight remained elusive. Dr. Ware, thanks to a family connection, overcomes the unimpressive beginning of his medical career, particularly underwhelming when compared to the achievements of his relatives and the expectations of his father. He takes a position at the New Jersey Asylum for Female Lunatics in Trenton. Once his benefactor, Medrick Ware, dies, under suspicious circumstances, swept under the rug, a promotion is in order, and Silas ends up running the joint. This allows him to medically experiment to his heart's content on people he considers subhuman, with few limits on what he's willing to put these women through in pursuit of medical research that he hopes will establish an impressive legacy for himself. Indeed, his efforts lead to him being known as the father of gyno-psychiatry. To outside observers, he is an innovative surgeon experimentally pushing the boundaries of medicine into the next century. In the 20th century, being born a woman may be less of a curse due to surgical cures devised by Silas Ware to combat a range of torments. So he leads himself to believe. Since he does not have much regard for the humanity of women that are not from a genteel class, women who are indentured servants, impoverished, possessing physical and mental ailments that have led them to placement in a mental asylum, Silas understands that he has a whole lot of latitude. He doesn't have to worry about lawsuits filed by affluent members of society over the suffering caused by his inhumane methods. Silas does not even recognize the horror of his behavior, since it is, after all, intended for the advancement of science, and the human guinea pigs at his disposal have minimal rights. The worst variety of monster, of course, is the type that does not realize he is a monster. The narrative of Butcher moves about from Silas's point of view to that of his eldest son, who comes to write a book about his father, and lastly, a woman named Bridget Keeley, who was sold into servitude by her mother to the New Jersey Asylum for Female Lunatics, a place that turns out to be every bit as terrible as its name suggests. Along with her low social status as an Irish indentured servant, Bridget is also deaf, mute, and albino. She's also arrestingly beautiful, as evidenced by the effect she has on both Silas Weir and his son/biographer, Jonathan, due largely to the spell she effortlessly cast over Dr. Weir. She is one of the few patients that he does more medical good for than harm. Yet in being allowed to serve as his head nurse assistant, so long as she's acceptably submissive, along with a midwife named Gretel, no evidence of a Hansel in her life, Bridget receives an up-close and personal view of Silas Weir's red-handed savagery. She is a recipient of crumbs of mercy who recognizes that she's an exception to an exceptionally harsh rule. The controversial methods of yesterday are the recognized atrocities of today. Tomorrow's point of view is anyone's guess. The lessons of history show us that whether one is an enslaved African brought to America to toil in cotton fields, or an indentured servant from Europe with a somewhat better life, or female in a society that holds little value for non-affluent white males, revolt is inevitable. It is only a matter of time until someone decides that enough is enough and sparks the match of revolution. I do not know what degree fact and what degree fiction Butcher happens to be. Some specific events are surely invented by Joyce Carol Oates, but the underlying theme is undeniably true tragedy. Quick Google research on Dr. Silas Weir after I finished this novel informed me that Butcher is based on the combined exploits of two 19th century doctors. Recognized with absolute clarity after having read two of her biographical novels is that Joyce Carol Oates is one hell of a writer who draws readers into uncomfortable spaces. I would be remiss not to issue trigger warnings for Butcher. This invasive book is not for the squeamish, but it is one for those who appreciate exceptional writing about the dark side of human nature. So that's about all I have to say about Butcher. I highly recommend it to those of you who can handle some gore and blood. Until next time, this is Roy of Roy's Book Reviews saying happy reading.